been installing large panel for almost a decade. But what's super unique about the new stuff is the texturing and the coloring that they're doing now with the large panels gives a 3D effect that's, to a layman and even to a designer like myself that's seen a lot of this, it's very difficult to distinguish whether that's a real stone product or a porcelain product.
What I found really interesting also is the newer, thinner formats. I mean, you're talking about pretty large sized slabs, but not just the size is growing, but the thicknesses are getting less and less, which is a huge advantage for.
Well, hello from Atlanta. Where are you guys?
Bologna, Italy. Absolutely right. Yeah, Bologna, Italy.
Wonderful. How's it going over there?
It's going amazing. Well, fortunately, the weather's been just fantastic. We've had about 2 teaspoons of sprinkle the whole time. Been beautiful, mid-70s, and seeing a lot of people, traveling, doing a lot of walking, a lot of eating. But yeah, having a great time so far.
Yeah,
awesome.
You'll hear looking at the background from a motorcycle or car going by. This is our deck here at our Airbnb. So it's a nice area to sit out and just enjoy the sun.
Wonderful. First of all, I got to know, what's been the best meal you guys have had so far? We all want to know over here because salivating.
That's probably the hardest question that you'll ask all day. It's really hard to place a favorite, but the local pasta here is special. It's unbeatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might want to edit this out, but Bo slept through the best meal. That was last night.
That's what
He
I
set his shades and he just went night-night.
I tried. I was calling.
Oh my gosh.
Mumbling a little bit.
But tonight actually promises to be the best meal. It's Mia.
Mamia. We're going
Mamia.
right on the outskirts.
It's a real small little family restaurant in the middle of nowhere that Jimmy walked to last time and said, we got to go back.
Matthew found it. Matthew Weiner from Westside Tile. He found it on our last day. He and I were here last year at the end of the show after everybody had left, and we decided to go a little bit to the outskirts to find our last lunch, and man, it was amazing. So we're all going tonight.
I'll be envious, you guys. You'll have to tell me about how it goes. I do love the food there, man. It's just tremendous. So tell us a little bit about this event you're at, why this is such a great thing to attend as tile professionals.
So it's called Cersaie, it's the largest tile exhibition in the world. Bo came a little bit early, and we went through the Lidicol facility and learn a little bit more about what they do there from the installation products. And then we were really fortunate that Crossville Studios set us up with a tour of the Del Conca Pastorelli plant. And we got to see the biggest and baddest kiln in the world, at least in Italy. Sure. It's over 2.5 football fields long. And we got to see tile made, from 42 minutes to the thin stuff to literally the thick tiles take 2 hours to go through the kiln. But it's state of the art. And that's the really spectacular thing, is to be able to see the technology today, because most people don't know is tile's the same price wholesale today that it was in World War II. And the reason it's the only consumer product that has remained around that same price level is because the technology has gone crazy, and they can make tiles really inexpensively, fast, and where a loaf of bread was a nickel back then and it's $1.50 now, tile's still $1.61 wholesale.
The whole concept of, I just envisioned like 2 football field long kiln. That sounds so crazy. And how long has this been working? Is it a new innovation?
So the line started, it was called Continua, and then they have a Continua Plus. Now they call this the Continua Plus Plus. So it's the newest, latest, and greatest. And every time they build a kiln, it's always longer, bigger, and badder. And then they have a lower production cost and they need to sell. So it changes the game from the standpoint of price and technology, what they can do also. So, and Bo can talk a little bit about what he saw there, which the 3D technology.
It's very important for me as a builder and designer to understand the process, understand any weaknesses and performance issues that I may need to mitigate or understand before using or suggesting a material like that. But I've seen large panel. We've been installing large panel for almost a decade. But what's super unique about the new stuff is the texturing and the coloring that they're doing now with the large panels gives a 3D effect that's, to a layman and even to a designer like myself that's seen a lot of this, it's very difficult to distinguish whether that's a real stone product or a porcelain product.
Wow.
And that's one of the things that most impressed me are all the applications that we can now use, these giant slabs that, are almost 4 foot wide by 10 foot long and some even bigger than that. Traditionally large formats, anything bigger than 6 inches. But for me, I really like using the slabs and being able to attend the facility and be instructed and educated on how the whole process works. It's priceless for me.
I can imagine. I mean, just we were talking to Bill Greasy just recently from TCNE, and he was talking about that whole advancement of the tile sizes and then everything that comes into that, right? As far as like the standards and what you've got to regard, like you're saying, about how to install it, how to understand how it's going to work under pressure with water or whatever else you're doing with the use of it. So that's really interesting.
Well, what I found really interesting also is the newer, thinner formats. I mean, you're talking about pretty large size slabs, but not just the size is growing, but the thicknesses are getting less and less, which is a huge advantage for someone like you who's fabricating and installing on major projects, where you're actually having to do a lot of the fabrication and handwork on site.
You're absolutely right. Thickness of tile accumulates to the weight of a tile too. So when you're talking about these slabs that are this large, logistics can be a real issue from the time that we're offloading to actually being able to apply the material. So the fact that it is getting thinner allows the installers to do a lot of the work by hand and not utilize machinery. And then also the thinner the porcelain, it allows us to do some pretty crazy things with being able to bend it and do things that traditionally, 6 millimeter and larger just can't do.
Too rigid.
Right.
Yeah, too rigid. It's just going to break.
Thinner slabs, the large, thin slabs, you're actually able to mold them to an extent around some radius.
Around larger radiuses, which is almost an optical illusion because you have almost no grout lines. And it's like, what is this, made of? And it looks phenomenal.
Even you and I were talking yesterday at one of the showrooms about the grout joints and how tight you can get them, much like in the old days when we used to do a lot of 12 by 12 or 18-inch marble tile installations. But all those materials had bevels for grout, so you could have a little bit of movement in the installation. But a lot of these installations that we were looking at, there's almost no room for grout, although you would ultimately put something in it. But the joints are so tight that they're virtually impossible to see. They're invisible.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, another thing, Tile Doctor introduced me to Lidocol as a product. And now I have the confidence in taking these large slabs and being able to apply those with a product like Lido Elastic and not have to worry about the movement, not have to worry about traditional thin sets that would be too rigid that would cause cracking. And that's another reason why we're able to really get those so close and reduce grout lines.
Yeah, and he's showing pictures here at the show to these tile industry professionals of how he's bending this tile around these radius edges, and they're going, "Oh my God, you can do that!" It's like they're from the industry, and here's this guy that's a builder designer in Texas going, "Yeah, I can do that."
Do you find yourself wanting, or is it possible to combine it with a smaller tile? Like, could you have bigger slabs along with a smaller and kind of do different patterns and stuff?
Sure,
most certainly.
In fact, in a lot of the showrooms, they were showing a specific material with different formats available in that same colorway or textureway or whatever it may be. So you'd have a big slab with next to a panel of the same material cut into a mosaic size or a 2x6 size installed vertically, just to show the range of what you can do. Really, once you have the slab, you can do anything you want with it size-wise. you can cut it down wherever you want.
Ah, that's true.
100%.
Yeah.
And another thing, with sizes this large, with the right cutting tools, you can cut freeform shapes, you can cut circles, the possibilities are almost endless with the material and how that can now react in an outdoor environment and an aquatic environment.
Mm-hmm.
So mixing those textures, I think, is going to be something that you'll see coming up for sure.
So it's the International Exhibition of Ceramic Tile and Bathroom Furnishings. What's trending? What's innovative? And clearly, some of the things you guys have already mentioned are very innovative and kind of game changers. And if you guys would, speak a little to like what you've seen at this event and what you're seeing as far as what could be trending or up in your game that beyond what you just mentioned. I'd like to hear more about that.
Well, definitely the large format slabs, the porcelain slabs, the super thin material is huge right now. I've noticed also textures and more vibrant colors as of late. We see a lot of showrooms showing different size ceramic and porcelain tiles with reliefs in them and different glaze formulas and colors that are pretty spectacular. One of my favorite showrooms this year has been the Nanda tiles. And they have a range of, they have a new range of just like I'm saying, 4x4 material with all kinds of different textures and colors. So that's pretty interesting. I didn't see as much glass as I've seen in the past, though. In fact, we were just mentioning Cersaie. Cersaie is a little surprising for me, maybe just because I'm a tile guy. We didn't see much as far as Cersaie's tile, but they're really focusing on their glass panels, their translucent stuff, their backlighting. Bo has some amazing pictures of their showroom, and they're focusing a lot on, I think, like just more home goods in a way, more fixtures and panels.
Yeah, they're in the bath section this year.
Yeah, they're not even.
And what's great for a guy like me, I don't do bathrooms, but I can take that same translucent tile, that backlit tile, and I've got 1,000 ideas on how I can introduce that into an aquatic environment and into an outdoor environment. And they can even structure the glass to where it's tempered to be able to take those type of thermal incline to where it's not going to crack, even though it is large panel glass. So it is kind of the next evolution of what we're seeing. Traditionally, it was only small glass, 1x1, 1x2 mosaics, things like that. But now you've got more technology that's leading into these large panels that they're very confident structurally that they will hold up. So for me to be able to see that and see some of the things that you can do with the lighting to change the glass any color that you want, again, that's where the design part of me starts to get giggly and excited about what's coming.
So it sounds like this event, I mean, part of, so many other aspects, but it really does, it sounds like it does give you opportunity to up your tile game in ways that when you come back home, like you just said, giggling, excited, you've got some new ideas that you can start incorporating in some of the work that you guys do. Do you have any thoughts about that? Or do you have clients who even ask you about these things? Or how do you approach that?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, I'm super excited about, number one, all the new hard surface products that we're seeing, but also manufacturers like Lidecol. They're in the midst of a complete rebranding and upgraded formulas of all of their products. And every year that I've been to the show several years in a row, and every year I walk away with kind of the same feeling that it's even better than it was last year. And it seems like this year, that company in particular is really on the verge of exploding with something amazing. As far as, number one, the look is going to be super modern and just really, to me, I'm excited about how it looks in the first place. But the products are yet again improved, which is hard to imagine, but they're actually doing it. So, yeah, I mean, I love that product, and that every year, that is what really updates my game.
You talk about upgrading your tile game. you got to start with the foundation. You can go find some exotic, amazing, textured, beautiful porcelain, but if you don't have the adhesion tools to make sure that it's protected, then you might as well just throw it in the dumpster because it's likely going to
They end up there anyway.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And so when you're upping your tile game, you need to start with the foundation of the education of knowing the installation product and then finding a good partner that will help you to understand the adhesion methods that are best for that particular tile, whether it's ceramic, porcelain, or glass.
These processes and all these things you have to consider, especially with tile, with working with tile, like you were saying, that adhesives, your grouting, and how one works better with the other, and the technical aspect of that, and why it's so important to have these different entities that you guys all interact with to keep improving it, but also make sure that you're using what you need to use to do this correctly. It just seems like that with tile, in every way that you could possibly use it, it's just gotten a little bit more of a technical aspect to me than a lot of other surfaces might.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's always something new to learn, number one, and jumping from one manufacturer to another, there's most definitely a learning curve between the different manufacturers. So I would say that it's important to stay up on like I was mentioning, Lidocol, they're yet again coming out with new and improved formulas. So whether it's Lidocol or any other manufacturer, you got to stay up on their instructions and their installation tips, and not just think that every bag of thinset is you mix it as quick as you can and start installing. Some manufacturers are going to have different ways for you to do that and different reasons and explain it properly. So there's always education out there to benefit from, no matter what level it is or level you're on.
Absolutely.
That's where installer struggles when they treat all the different products the same from manufacturer to manufacturer, because not every adhesive is the same from manufacturer to manufacturer.
I would also say, the most expensive way to learn is through failure. And so if you can invest a little bit of your time and your resources into the education before you go into that process, you'll probably save yourself a lot of stress and a lot of money. It's obviously super important to partner with a guy like Kurt, because I will learn that before I install versus, hey, I broke 7 panels trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
What happened the first time I tried to do this.
And that's 10 grand.
Yes.
There goes 10 grand or more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas had I approached Kurt instead of just trying to be Superman, he would have told me, hey, you need these types of tools and you might want to consider this, and let's contact the manufacturer to ensure that this is going to marry up perfectly. And that was a great learning experience, but I didn't have to go through that. So that's what we're here trying to do now, is for those that are entering, the market and entering the industry, stressing the education and understanding of each product is vital to, kind of sidestep some of those big mistakes that can be made along the way.
They think, oh, it's underwater, no one will see it. No, it's magnified.
You know how many times I've heard that? What does it matter? It's like,
This is very exciting to hear, by the way, about Lidocol and these new changes. Kurt, do you want to say a little bit more about that, given, you being the U.S. distribution?
Yeah, there's a lot of new things coming, and I'm sure a lot of manufacturers have their own things there, the direction they're going north with their products and stuff. But we just attended the Flooring Sustainability Summit in Washington, D.C. that was actually headed up and moderated by Bill Greasy from TCNA, and he did a fabulous job, by the way. In case he watches this, I want to say that. But,
yes.
But it was the whole industry, the whole flooring industry getting together, and one of the biggest conversations was the CO2, the carbon, that happens in manufacturing. And I just learned today, don't fry me if it's not a true statement, because I heard it. I've not been able to verify it. But they said the leaders in CO2 are India, China, and then the cement industry is number 3 in creating carbon emissions. And so what Lidocol has done is taken literally the forefront, and they're engineering some of their new adhesives to have 26, 27% less cement. So they're going to be a
Wow.
lot greener just by virtue of using less cement. It's probably things that most people don't think of. But in the U.S., they've
Mm-mm.
started adding limestone to cement, and it's degrading the quality of the cement. But they've taken a little different approach and decided to engineer it differently and take the cement out and put other things in there, not limestone, but other things that work as adhesives too. So it's a very interesting involvement in a truly green product, from the standpoint of just, doing all you can, to help out.
Exactly. That makes so much sense. And, just what you guys were saying about the community, that aspect of just, from the standards that the TCNA or, the NTCA and all of that, all the different things that come together to kind of create this industry and all the different entities and factors that go on in it as a community, which, is kind of part of what this podcast is about, is bringing that community together. So it's always nice to hear about that. And speaking of which, I was just curious about, how did all you guys meet? Could you tell us a little bit about how you guys all even got connected?
Well, I can say I met Kurt many, many years ago from an old mutual friend, Steve Slutza from Westside Tile, who has unfortunately passed since. But Steve introduced me to Kurt and Lita Call back then, and we became pretty good friends and confidants. We talked to each other quite a bit throughout the week regarding, all kinds of things, mostly job related. But so we've stayed pretty close, and we travel together and do events and exhibitions and shows all over the States, really. I mean,
And for those who don't know it, tell them about your specialty.
My specialty?
Your specialty. What do you install?
I like to cook. In case you don't know, I'm an installer, and we install, I'd say about 90% of our work is glass tile pools, all glass tile pools. We do install other materials, but basically we do all tile pools. So we work all over the States. And so having a relationship like I have with Kurt is really helpful, because no matter where I am, what project I'm working on, in no matter what state, he's a phone call away. Sometimes he's a few blocks away, and he can actually visit the site. So that's how I know Kurt, and I know Bo through different groups that we've been involved in, and I believe through Kurt in the first place is the first time I met Bo. Yeah. So I'm happy to be involved with these guys and what they're doing, and just happy to be here.
Yeah, I was actually introduced to Kurt through a design group, and when I started to do a little bit more research, and we first actually visited the Lita Call facility about 5 years ago, something like that.
Just pre-COVID.
Just pre-COVID, yeah. I was just blown away by it, and then I'm a guy that I hunger for the education. So if I can be in a room with gentlemen like this, I just try to silence myself if I can. Most that know me would say I don't do that very well, but I just try to listen, because I'm surrounded by a lot of genius and a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. And so I really appreciate that, because while I'm not a tile installer, through the advice of Jimmy and through the advice of Kurt, I can inform my masons in a very educated way on the proper way to do this, and they trust what I say is accurate, because they know how serious I am about my craft, and I think that's huge.
And both of these guys are going to have presentations at the Southwest Pool Show coming up in Houston this year, mid-February, correct?
Wow, great. Well, so Jimmy, tell us a little bit. I mean, we won't get too much, because I want to interview you guys separately at some point. So Jimmy, how long have you had your company now?
I've had my company since the mid-'80s. I've been in the tile industry in some way since I was about 12 years old. So I started working for a contractor and just kind of went up through the ranks. Officially opened rock solid in the mid-late 80s, and just have gone forward since then.
What got you involved in tile at 12 years old?
Well, the contractor that I worked for was a neighbor. He lived across the street. So I started working for them in the summers and on weekends. And that's really where I was exposed to it and started learning the craft. And they were, back in the day, those guys were really at the top of their game as well. So I feel like I had a lot of good influence. An old friend of mine who was the owner of that original company, it was called European Stoneworks. This is back in the 70s. So a friend of mine, he's living his life now in Hawaii, Lonnie Cooper. I always give him the credit that he deserves, because he was the one that mentored me from day one and let me run wild like a maniac, but also kind of reeled me in when he needed to on job sites and making sure I showed up at the job at the right time. So I always give him the credit, or give him the props he deserves. But that's how I got into it. Basically, a neighbor was a contractor, started working for him, and it went from there.
That's incredible. And but how about you?
I've been in the swimming pool industry and construction industry for about 20 years now. I've always been drawn to the aquatic environment. I never had a swimming pool growing up, but we were always at the lake. The water has always been a big part of my life. So as I got out of high school, I actually attended the Art Institute of Dallas and focused on design. And right after I got out of college there, I actually got a job working for one of the big box pool builders. And that started to kind of pique my interest in the industry. And then in around 2006, I actually opened a company, KB Custom Pools. We were in business for 17 years, and we just recently rebranded to more of a consultation firm. Now I do consultation and design work for builders and architects nationwide, and we exclusively build in Central Texas.
Oh, wow. Okay. When I bring up both y'all's websites, by the way, it literally is kind of jaw dropping, because to be real with you, I'm not used to like seeing pools that are just so gorgeous, and just to me, it's just gorgeous work. So, Kurt, now you're on the hot seat. I know a little of your story, but just tell our audience too a little bit how you got involved in this industry.
So you mentioned Matthew Weiner a little bit. His dad started a company called Quamagra in Anaheim, California, what's now Tile Row there. He was one of the forerunners, and my father actually was a brick mason that went to work at a company called Del Pizzo Tile. He started them importing tile, and he was one of the first people to really import tile in the United States in large quantity. So I literally, the 12-year-old number is the same. I mean, I started sweeping floors, for extra money. And I can tell you, I've never worked directly for my father. He always made sure there was somebody over me that wouldn't let me slack off 1 second. But I had friends working in fast food making $1.20 an hour, and I'm making $5.50, $6 an hour, and I was like, man, this business is good. I like it. So really just started learning how to make samples, how to build samples for the sales reps. They all liked the samples that I made, so I moved into other things and just started moving around and doing different things in the industry. My brother's son is now working for a company called Arizona Tile. So he's third generation rep now in the tile industry.
That is so interesting. I mean, these mentors we have in our early working years, they're so important as far as like what they instill. So interesting to hear everybody's stories. Do you guys have any other like takeaways that you'd like to share about what you might take home with you that might up your tile game?
For me, I feel like Europe's always a couple of years ahead of the United States, if not even further, as far as design and fashion and things of that nature. So to be able to travel out here and see even just the displays that are erected and constructed within the actual area itself, the show itself, is very interesting to understand some of the more contemporary and more modern ideas on how to use some of these materials that I may not have seen in the United States. So as a designer, just being able to take a piece here and there from some of the displays and be able to create my own ideas just from those types of influences has been very helpful as a designer for sure. In addition to seeing, obviously some of the most innovative materials that are on the market currently.
Yeah, I feel
Awesome.
the same. Just all the new materials, and like I mentioned earlier, the surface, the textures and colors that are coming out now, all these new products that's what's really exciting to me. That, and also the materials, the installation materials themselves. So I always bring back a ton of ideas in my head, and I just can't wait to hit the ground back in the States.
Yeah, for me,
That's
it's what to
great.
say no to. The hardest thing is there's so much cool stuff, and then you got to
Mhm.
figure out how to dial it back and say no to stuff, and really just be able to concentrate on the one or two things, because you can't do it all that you've seen here. So that's important.
That is important. That's a good point, because there's so much stuff. Not that one thing is better than the other, but you really got to
Mhm.
focus on just what hits you the most. What really just grabs you. So that's it can be a hard choice to make, but getting just a couple of really solid ideas that really touch you in some way and being able to bring that back, for me, that's exciting. So this
Wow.
exhibition, you could walk it for days and really not see everything.
Also helps that it's located in one of the most spectacular countries in the world, and you're surrounded by timeless architecture and inspired by some of the most amazing art in the world. Being able to see some of that in addition to the show can be very inspiring.
It's so funny that how ancient Italy is, and the art of tile, and how far back it goes, and how ancient it is, but that it's still constantly renewing, but it still retains that integrity and the art. And now almost the overwhelm of it, because just as you were saying, I mean, Italy, to me, I literally just remember walking around, just like looking at, beautiful art. You're just like, I can't take all this. This is too much. Like, I need to go have an espresso or have a glass of wine. It's incredible. Anything else you guys want to add as like some last thoughts from your wonderful place in Bologna?
A little humor.
Yeah, I always like a little humor.
He's walking around the show and everybody goes, "Oh, Texan." I say, "No, New York City."
The old picante sauce commercial.
Yeah,
there.
nobody got it.
I've had a lot of Italians whisper in my ear, "Texas," as they walk by, and I just kind of giggle about it. It's like they've never seen a cowboy hat before, but it's great. It's great. It's a lot of fun.
I remember that commercial, and I love the way the guy would say New York City. I mean, it was just like total drawl with that. And hey man, you're welcome. Any other thoughts, you guys?
I would just
Excited about dinner?
Very much so.
Definitely. I would encourage anybody that has the means to visit this exhibition at least once in their career. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for taking time out of your late afternoon to talk to us about your adventures there, and have a wonderful dinner tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.